patterns are changing quite significantly.
Very much.
And I think we've noticed how the plants are confused of what's going on.
They are, yes.
What is your experience?
Well, this year especially, everything's late. We're currently planning for a show garden this year in bloom in Dublin, and all the plants here are about a month behind because of the weather. Also then there's problems with availability of plants because plants have been damaged, etc. But I don't think, some people say that's a modern thing, it's climate change, it's global warming, and I think it does have a lot to do with that. But I mean, hundreds of years ago people had to cope with these kind of things too, and seasons change and Mother Nature, that's just the way it is. So what I would say is, view your own site, and think long and hard about what you're going to put into the garden. If you have a wet site, plant things that are wet. If you love lavender, etc., grow it in pots. Right plant, right place is the old adage, but it's perfectly true. And you can bend the rules a bit, but you need to kind of stick to your own conditions and grow things that And that can be a bit of a challenge, but it's a good challenge in a way, because it makes you think a bit more about what you're going to put in the garden. The big thing about sustainability now too is, if you grow the right plants in the right place, you're obviously going to use less water, less commodities. You're not going to be feeding things that don't, they shouldn't have to feed. So all of those things, just garden with your own, within your own limits and your own garden's abilities. Otherwise, you'll be heartbroken. It's.
Well, and although we talked about drainage, one of the options that we'd actually use was we put a big tub so that half the water went into there.
Yes.
Any
definitely
advice about
a water pot is great, because like roofs are something that collect huge amounts of rainwater, and if you can recycle that and have a water pot, if you put up a greenhouse or a shed or whatever, it's good. Especially I think they're talking about water rates and stuff coming in, so things like that. But I mean, all of these things as well, it sounds a bit like the good life, and it sounds a bit like allotment gardening, and you're going to have a shed with a water butt and something else. And, you can incorporate all these into a well-designed, smart garden as well. And that's the key. I think getting people to think long term about that sort of thing, as well as just they want the pretty garden, and which of course everybody does, and it's all about that. It's all about the visuals, but it's all about everything that goes on underneath that to get it like that.
We've talked about how life is rushed.
Yes,
and
very much.
Obviously, when you're in the garden, you take a bit of time.
Yes.
Yes. From a psychological perspective, how therapeutic is that?
Gardening is a great therapeutic tool. Because you have to slow down, you have to stop, you have to do what you're doing. It's a methodical process, and it's a great way of switching off just completely. Getting out into the garden, and it's good for you. It's healthy, and it is great for the mind. It's great for the soul. It's great for the body. It's a super thing. Even if you do it, just even once a week or whatever. Make time to do it. Definitely make time to do it. If you have a window box, a pot outside, a tub that you grow potatoes in, just take the time and do it.
Now, what other? Obviously, you're gardening.
Yes.
You're sitting there and observing the life that's happening in the garden.
Yes.
We have lots of birds.
Yeah.
And there's some amazing.
Of course.
Are there types of flowers that people might think about that might attract certain types of birds?
Yes, I mean good pollinating flowers. Not even just birds, but bees. Bees are like so important now, and just a lot of the flowers now have been overbred. They're bigger flowers, they're double flowers, and the bees can't access the flowers. Simple flowers are, the old flowers is what bees can use to pollinate. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the big blousy blooms that everybody likes. By all means have them, but make make allowance for having the lavender or the pittosporum or whatever it happens to be that attracts the bees in. The buddleias for the butterflies. And again, grow them. Don't cut them all down at the same time. If you have buddleias, let them grow, through the season, so that you've always got some flowers there, and because there are obviously later butterflies, earlier butterflies, whatever.
I know that about 4 or 5 years ago, we hadn't seen this before. I'm not sure. There's some little yellow flowers that my mum had put in. I'm not sure what they were, but we suddenly, the whole garden was swarming with what looked like admiral butterflies.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen it since.
Yes.
Was that a phenomenon of that?
It could have been just because that flower was planted there and it was planted en masse, or it could have been just that year was particularly good for that butterfly or whatever. But if you generally keep a good selection of wildlife flowers and plants in the garden and grasses and things like that, and seed heads to feed the birds through the winter, you'll get the extra benefit without knowing that you're getting that benefit to wildlife.
Obviously, if you're planting through year in, year out, is there the soil can get exhausted, I imagine.
Yes. You've got to feed your soil, especially intensive gardening if you have one plot and one small size, or an allotment or something like that. And you've got to feed the soil, preferably with an organic feed, because it actually feeds the soil, and then whatever you put into the soil, and replenish that, like do crop rotation and things like that. You don't have to be like religious about it, but just make sure that you're aware that what you're taking out of the soil you're putting back in with a good organic feed. Everything benefits from that, and you don't need to overfeed all the time with chemical fertilizer or chemical feeds, whatever. You don't need to do that. Just keep on top of it year on year, and good husbandry, good practices.
We're now using sort of brown bins for recycling. I'm not sure if it's the same colour. It might be green in some cases.
Yeah.
So is there obviously a compost might be useful. What advice would you give someone?
Compost as well. Compost is good. It just improves the structure of the soil as well as adding some feed to it. There are different composts on the market, and there are different mulches on the market, like bark and stuff like that. The compost that you talked about, the green bins, we actually have had some of that from the council in the garden centre, back here in bags, and it was great. It was good, and it's good to know that that's happening.
No, there was somebody using bananas and somebody using eggshells and things. So, and obviously, if you're cutting your own lawns, that can fit into that.
Yes, it does. If you're making your own compost, grass compost, is a great source of nitrogen. But what happens is if you just have all grass cuttings, it can go a bit kind of slimy. So you need to add some fibrous matter. Cuttings, smaller plants, whatever, into it, just to bulk it up a bit, so that you've got a whole mixture there, and eventually you'll get nice, good garden compost that you can use.
And if you're cutting bits of trees down,
cut them up smaller you can get them. They'll. I mean, obviously, the bigger, whatever it is you're composting, the bigger, it is. It's going to take longer to compost down.
Can you get small domestic type wood chippers or anything like that?
I think there are some on the market. I think so. Yeah, like a shredder type thing.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
So there's a way of doing that as well.
Yeah, so there's a way of doing that.
Okay.
So yeah.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.